In this lesson, we're going to take our use course composable that we have been working with throughout this course, and we will refactor it to use the use fetch with cache composable that we just created. We'll also have to refactor a bunch of little things throughout our app so that we can use these new endpoints correctly with the rest of our application. So to get started, we're going to move into our use course file. And we have a lot of stuff going on here because we're taking this course data and then mapping it and adding different path to it, adding types to it. But now that we're having an endpoint that does this for us, we can get rid of most of this. In fact, this use course composable becomes this very simple line here. This is all we need in order to fetch the data from this endpoint. The use fetch with cache composable handles all of that other stuff for us, except that we need to do one more thing in order to finish this. And that is we need to add the type. And the type here we know is course meta. But we have to import this from somewhere. And currently, this course data type is only defined in this meta endpoint. So what we need to do is pull out these types and move them into our type file that we have created. So we'll grab these and open up our course types file. And then we'll add them in at the bottom here. And then these last ones here, we need to export as well so that we can use them in other parts of the application. Now that we've moved these types out of the endpoint, we now need to import them back in. Now that we've done that, the types in this endpoint should be good to go. And then we just need to import the course meta type from there. And this is all that we need to do to re-implement this use course composable. Now that we have this handy use fetch with cache composable that does some nifty things for us, as well as our course meta endpoint. The next step is to refactor the rest of our application in order to use these two new endpoints correctly. So we're getting data, but we're getting data in a slightly different way than we were before. So that requires us to make a couple little changes throughout the app. First, we'll go with the use first lesson. And one thing that we need to do is that use course is no longer a synchronous composable. It returns a promise, and so we need to make sure that we await on this. So we'll add this async keyword to the function so that we can add in this await keyword. And then we are getting a ref back now, so we can't destructure immediately off of that. Or at least I prefer to not do that. And now we add in course.value.chapters.lessons, and this works as it should. Now that we've changed the interface of this use first lesson composable, we'll need to update every instance that we use this composable as well. So we'll first go into our course page here where we use the use course composable. And again, we'll add in the await keyword. We'll change this to course. And then where we use chapters and title, we have to update. So we'll put in course.title here. And then course.chapters. And in this component here, we're not using the use first lesson composable yet, but what we want to do is navigate to this first lesson here. So it makes sense that we should, while we're at it, just refactor this part here. Now we've tidied this up nicely. And one thing that's interesting that you'll note is that, yes, we are calling use course in here, and then use first lesson immediately will call use course itself. But because of the caching that we've added in and the caching that use async data provides, we won't ever make multiple calls one after the other to an endpoint. So that's it for the course page. Let's move on to the lesson page. In this one, we have a few things we need to update as well. We need to put an await on this use course here. And in our middleware, we need to put an await on our use course, which requires us to also make this function async. And now that course is a ref, we need to add .value to this. And lastly, down here where we use the course to find the chapter, we'll add the value in there as well. And in the title. Almost missed that one. The last page that we need to refactor is the login page. So let's head over to that one. Same thing as before. I'm going to do await. Replace this with the course. And then we just need to pop in course.title and we're good to go. The one last thing we want to do before we wrap up with the data fetching section of this chapter is to get rid of this course data file in our composables. Now that our data is all provided to us from our endpoint, we don't need to have any of the data shipped to the client. All of that data can stay on the endpoint on the server. Okay, so we're going to restart the dev server to make sure we've got the latest code changes. And because we've got caching based on our session, we'll create a new session. And as we click around, things are appearing to work as they should. We can log out. It says log in to TypeScript with Vue.js 3, which is the title of the course. So that's great. And something looks like it broke here. Why is this link not clickable? I forgot to update the index page here. Okay. So once we do that, then we refresh this, and now this is actually a clickable link. And there we go. We have now refactored our app so that it works correctly with all the endpoints that we created, those 2 endpoints. So now the data is not shipped with our client bundle, but instead lives on the endpoint. And all of the data that we're accessing, we access through these API endpoints. The next step is now to move that data from our endpoints and move it into a database. So that's what we'll be tackling in the next couple of lessons, setting up our database, setting up Prisma so that we can access our database in a nicely typed way, and then fetching that data from our database in our endpoints instead of using the local files that we've currently been using.